Greetings, friends around the world. This is Dr. Bob Thiel for the Bible News Prophecy channel. I want to talk about the Red Horsemen of War and riots. We've been seeing riots all across the United States, and off and on for years we've been seeing them in Hong Kong, and protests have been increasing over there. And also there's fears over in the Middle East of another intifada by the Palestinians, who are upset, distressed by the fact that the government of Israel wants to annex more land. Now consider something that Jesus said. Let's go to the book of Matthew, Matthew 24. I'm going to start reading in verse 4. This will be from the New King James Version of the Bible. Take heed no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will deceive many. And you'll hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you're not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There'll be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Now, I believe we are in the beginning of sorrows, and Jesus' comment about many are going to come in my name saying I'm the Christ and deceive many, I think this is related to the ecumenical interfaith movement, which is gaining ground around the world. They claim Jesus, parts of them anyway, but they don't truly act like it, and I think they're deceiving many. Now, Jesus said this would be followed by wars and rumors of wars. Well, the White Horseman is the first of the seals of the book of Revelation chapter 6, and it turns out that the ride of the Red Horseman is the second seal. So let's read a little bit about what Jesus had the Apostle John write about this. Revelation 6, starting verse 3. When he opened the second seal, I heard a second living creature saying, Come and see. Another horse, fiery red, went out. It was granted to the one who sat on it to take peace from the earth, and that people should kill one another, and there was given him a great sword. Well, the specter of war is haunting the world right now. We have situations where, for example, the Iranians are looking at doing something about it. There's prophecies in Isaiah about great damage being done to Jerusalem, apparently from Syrians and Iranians. There's other conflicts in other parts of the world. We could be at the stage that the ride of the Red Horseman has just begun, or is very close to doing so. Now, back in late 2019, I put together an article about 20 things to watch for in 2020. And one of them was strife and the Red Horse of War. And one of the things that I quoted in there was a particular passage of Scripture. Now, this is going to be from the Orthodox Jewish Bible, how it translates the first part of Matthew 24:7. So let me read that. For there will be an intifada of ethnic group against ethnic group. And in that same warning, I said, we expect to see more wars, rumors of wars, and civil unrest. And we are seeing that in 2020. Now, when I heard an African, presumably black woman, scream out, kill all the white folks, on a news broadcast a couple of nights ago, her statement ended up bringing this intifada of ethnic group against ethnic group translation to mind. Now, intifada means a rebellion or uprising, or more properly, it comes from an Arabic word intifada, meaning shaking off. And we've seen rebellion and a desire to shake off various government practices in recent protests and riots. Again, not just in the United States, but also in places such as the Middle East and in Hong Kong, and there's some other parts of the world as well. Now, as far as race riots go, I saw some printed signs in the windows of various businesses in the Minneapolis area on the news. And these are printed, and it something to the effect of black-owned business. Apparently the hope is that others who are demonstrating or looting will not ransack their buildings. This actually reminded me of some spray-painted words that I saw back in 1967. In 1967, after the riots there, my parents brought my brothers and I into Detroit to look at various things and see what happened. And I remember seeing Soul Brother painted on buildings. Again, the hope was, I guess, that the buildings wouldn't get destroyed or ransacked. Now, related to that riot, I'd like to read something from the History Channel, history.com. The 1967 Detroit riots were among the most violent and destructive riots in U.S. history. By the time the bloodshed, burning, and looting ended after 5 days, 43 people were dead, 342 injured. Nearly 1,400 buildings had been burned, and some 7,000 National Guard and U.S. Army troops had been called into service. Well, worse riots are going to happen related to the Red Horseman's ride, and that Red Horseman had not started to ride back in 1967. Now, it should be noted that this Horseman's ride is the second seal of the seals in Revelation 6. It's not the Great Tribulation. That doesn't happen until the fifth seal. And after the second seal comes the third seal, which has got to do the black horse ride of the black horseman on a famine, or food shortages, or food inflation, and that's followed by the pale green horse of pestilences. And then the Great Tribulation starts. But just because one seal is open, that doesn't automatically close the ones before it. And that will be one of the things to do with the red horse, the rider of the red horse, and we'll get to that a little bit later. Jesus said to expect wars and rumors of wars, and we're seeing that. Now, in terms of timing, I'd like to read something from the late Herbert W. Armstrong. He said the first horseman is not the coming of Christ. Then he also said this is a prophecy for the future. And so back in when he was alive, and he died in 1986, he said the first horseman's ride was a prophecy for the future. And again, I think it's happened now in the 21st century. Furthermore, I'd like to read something from an old Worldwide Church of God booklet called Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, the Red Horse War. John writes, and he goes into stuff about Revelation 6, but then it says he wasn't speaking about the fall of Jerusalem. That war was already 20 years behind him. He was referring to future events that would bring 6,000 years of human history crashing to a cataclysmic close. The context of the book of Revelation alone demonstrates this. In chapter 9, verse 16, John writes of an army of 200 million men. There were barely that many men, women, and children on the earth in the day of Christ and the Apostle John. Until the 19th century, it would have been possible to field an army this big, even if all the nations of the world had pooled their manpower resources. John is referring to a time yet ahead of us when peaceful coexistence will be a thing of the past. And that was written in 1975. So back in 1975, the position of the old Worldwide Church of God is this was the future. And that's true. Now what's going to lead to the riding of the horsemen, including the one of war? Well, Satan. Satan deceives the whole world. And this was been a factor in the rise of the white horse, and will be a factor for others as well. Satan is stirring up unrest around the world, and this also includes Europe. Now, if we go to the book of Revelation 13, starting in verse 1, we find that a warring leader is going to rise up. The Bible says, "Then I stood on the sand of the sea. I saw a beast rising out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard, his feet were like the feet of a bear, mouth like the mouth of a lion. The dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. I saw one of his heads has been mortally wounded, and the deadly wound was healed. And all the world marveled and followed the beast. So they worshipped the beast, they worshipped the dragon, gave authority to the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like the beast? Who is able to make war with him?" Now, the particular sea he's talking about is the Great Sea. You can read that in Daniel 7, verses 2 to 8. And the Bible calls that, in other places, or refers to that as the Mediterranean Sea. It doesn't use the term Mediterranean Sea, but it describes the location. That's the only sea you could be talking about. And once this beast does a massive war, this will be successful. First, he's probably going to quell civil unrest in Europe. Then he's going to turn against the United States and the United Kingdom. For example, let's go to Daniel chapter 8, starting verse 24. "His power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. He shall destroy fearfully, and shall prosper and thrive, and he shall destroy the mighty and also the holy people. Through his cunning he shall cause deceit to prosper under his rule. He shall exalt himself in his heart. He shall destroy many in their prosperity." So this is, again, a reference, I believe, to the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, and perhaps Australia and New Zealand being affected. As far as the United States goes specifically, you may want to go to Daniel chapter 11, verse 39. It says, "He shall go against the strongest fortresses of this foreign god, which he shall acknowledge and advance its glory. He shall cause them to rule over many and divide the land for gain." Well, the strongest fortresses in the 21st century Who do they belong to? United States. To a lesser degree, it's Anglo-Saxon, Celtic allies. So this is if this is end time prophecy for now, this is reference to the United States being destroyed. It's not the only thing that will happen. In verse 40 of Daniel 11, you see the king of at the end of the time of the end, the king of the south will attack him. The king of the north will come against him like a whirlwind, with his chariots, horsemen, many ships. So the countries and overwhelmed and then pass through. And I won't read the rest of that, but basically these are Muslim-dominated countries in the Middle East and North Africa. So we've got a leader who's going to be militaristically successful for a time, consistent with the rider of the red horse. And this is why it's not just riots involve the red horseman, it's the rider of the red horse, but also war, and will be serious war. I'm not going to read it, but you're familiar with passages regarding Armageddon and the 200 million man army, and that's going to happen. And what's going to end up happening, let's go to Revelation 17, verse 14. These will make war with the Lamb, that's Jesus, and the Lamb will overcome them, for he is the Lord of lords, King of kings, and those who are with him are called, chosen, and faithful. And similarly, in Daniel 2:44, it says, in those days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall not be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people. It will break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms and will stand forever and ever. So we see what's going to end up happening is that Jesus is going to return. Wars, he'll destroy those who are going to fight against him, and those type of wars will end. Now what's going to happen after this? Instead of just going to all the bad news, I'd also like to read a little bit more from the old Worldwide Church of God booklet on the red horse. Peace at last. Jesus Christ will then go about the business of establishing real world peace, with Satan the devil bound, his destructive church-state combine out of the way, with the nations no longer governed by fallible men. Remarkable things will begin to happen. Isaiah writes, it shall come to pass in the last day, the mountain, the government of the Lord's house shall be established on the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow in unto it. Many people shall go and say, come ye, let's go to the mountain, the house of the Lord, to the God of Jacob. He will teach us his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. He shall judge among the nations, and rebuke many people. They shall beat their swords into plowshares, their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither will they learn war any more. For the first time, the vast majority of people will learn what it means to live according to God's laws. No longer will they be motivated to fight and quarrel, but will learn to love their fellow man. There it is, the final solutions of war. For the sake of all humanity, the sooner it arrives, the better. And when you see some of these things as the riots. Now, I'm not saying that the protesters or rioters in different parts of the world don't have any legitimate gripe. But when they start to be involved in violence and wanton destruction, they're not showing love toward their neighbor. And that's going to change. Despite wars and rumors of wars and riots, the good news is that God's kingdom is going to come, and those issues are going to be gone. Yet currently we see a situation where we've got violent unrest and posturing, but ultimately that will fail. But again, we're very close to the start of the ride of the red horse of the apocalypse. Watch world events, because that one will be followed by the ride of the other two horsemen, and then by the start of the Great Tribulation. And again, ultimately Jesus will return. This is Dr. Bob Thiel for the Bible News Prophecy Channel.